Chapter 3. Wesley was again swept with a strong desire to protect the young woman at his side. His anger towards her was sufficiently squelched. He could see how she might have gotten entangled in the scheme without realizing what was involved, and so he determined to help her. "My friends and I could help you." "How, my lord? Are you planning to offer for me after all?" Wesley could tell from her tone of voice that she thought the idea was ridiculous. Shockingly, he didn't fully agree with her, but he had no interest in giving up his unwedded state any time soon. He appreciated her being honest with him, so he gave her the same courtesy. "I have no desire to get leg-shackled at this time, my lady, but I do believe the Duke would expect me to help you out, despite your involvement with his enemies. He is very happy with how things have worked out after all, and is feeling decidedly magnanimous. I know he would consider it his obligation as a gentleman to ensure that no scandal attaches itself to you. Since he is not here to see to that himself, I will do so in his stead." "What exactly do you have in mind, my lord? I am uncertain if I am comfortable with you trying to sort out my life for me." "I promise you I shan't do anything you do not agree to. I was merely thinking that my friends and I could pay you some attention. This would draw the gentleman's attention. Before you know it, you will have to pick between multiple offers." Wesley felt a warm tendril unfurl within his chest when he heard her rich chuckle. "You, my lord, are a devious one, aren't you? Do you really think you have that much influence over other members of the ton?" "I hate to sound like an arrogant dunce, but yes, I do believe it would be easy enough to do. Most people are followers. If it was just me paying attention to you, some might dismiss it. But if I get my friends involved, it will surely take effect." "I thought you hate schemes." Wesley heard the suspicion in her voice. "When they are designed to hurt someone I care about, I do. But in this case, it's for a good cause. Do you intend to be a good and faithful wife, if and when we get you matched up with someone?" "Of course," she stammered, still seeming confused. "But why would your friends agree to such a plan?" "For any number of reasons, my lady. You need not trouble yourself about that. They will consider it to be a lark, I am sure." There was a moment of silence while Lady Anne stared straight ahead, deep in thought. "I mean no offence, my lord, but I have to tell you that I feel quite questionable about your motives. But if you really do manage to set such a plan in motion, I can see that it just might work." She gave a helpless-sounding laugh that plucked at Wesley's sympathies. "Unfortunately, my wish for a life of independence is highly impractical. If you could manage to find me an appropriate gentleman to wed, I would be most grateful." Wesley ignored the impulse he felt to withdraw his offer. His word as a gentleman was his bond. The sooner he could get the chit attached to someone, the better it would be for his peace of mind. She was nothing but trouble. "Do you know which entertainment your aunt is planning to take you to this evening?" "Not entirely, my lord. I must admit that I haven't been paying very close attention to these matters over the past couple of days. She did mention, as we were leaving, that we didn't have to be anywhere too early, so I would think that means we are not attending any dinner parties. I am fairly certain we accepted an invitation to a ball at Clarehurst for this evening. I'm sorry, I'm not very helpful, am I?" "Don't go backsliding into mousy behaviour now, my dear. You've been shoring up your gumption for a couple of days. Pay it no mind for now. Find out what you can about your future engagements. We will track you down this evening and set our plans in motion." He felt his protective urges stirring once more as Lady Anne grabbed his arm and turned her luminous eyes toward him. He could feel it as though it were a tangible thing, as she chose to put her trust in him. "Thank you, my lord. I know I don't deserve your assistance in this matter, but I am deeply grateful for it nonetheless. I will do my best to be cooperative." Patting her hand and feeling uncomfortable with her gratitude, Wesley strove for a change of topic as he turned and headed back with her toward his carriage. "I didn't notice your father at the ball last night, nor again today when I arrived at your aunt's house. Previously, it seemed as though he was always hovering over you protectively." Again, her eyes slid nervously away from his gaze, and Wesley felt his suspicions rising. But then she quickly turned her eyes to meet his, and he could see tears welling in them. "Oh, my lord, I do not know what has become of him. He hasn't been seen for a couple of days, ever since he told me why he wanted me to set my cap for the Duke. I was incensed with him for the first time in my life, and I said a couple of things I probably shouldn't have. He stormed out, and, as far as I know, he hasn't come back. It is another thing I am worrying about, to be honest. My aunt thinks he has probably just taken off in order not to spoil my chances, but I really don't think he would have gone back home without saying goodbye to me." Wesley found himself rubbing her hand as it lay on his arm, trying to offer what little comfort he could. He fought an irrational desire to put his arm around her, and still the trembling he could feel from her. "What do you think could have happened to him? Is it really that far out of his character?" Anne shook her head. "I have no idea where he might be. Until my mother died, he was the steadiest character you would ever encounter. Since then, I keep telling myself that nothing he does should surprise me. But I know he cares about me and would not want me to fret. I worry that his unsavoury companions have done him harm." She returned her tear-filled gaze to his once more, and Wesley felt his chest tighten. "Do not work yourself up into a taking, my lady. I tell you what, I will set a runner onto the case. I am sure he has just done as your aunt said. He is probably squirreled away on his estate." "Would you really send someone to look for him?" Wesley felt as though he were taller, as the young woman looked at him so admiringly. "I hate for you to go to such an expense on my account, my lord, but, oh, I would so appreciate it." "Never mind about the expense, my dear. It actually costs woefully little to hire a runner. They really ought to value themselves higher. Now come along. Let me drive you through the park as I promised, and then I must see you home. If I am to set this plan in motion, I need to meet with my friends before the evening." Anne quickened her pace, trying to keep up with Wesley's suddenly lengthening stride. She was feeling overwhelmed with all the sudden changes. Who would have ever thought that she would be feeling so friendly towards the Viscount of Bracondale, or that he would appear to want to stand by her as a friend? She knew she had no real reason to trust the nobleman, but he really did inspire confidence in her. For the first time since she had arrived in London, she was feeling optimistic about her chances of making an advantageous match. And, if a little piece of her heart fluttered a trifle too energetically while in the vicinity of the Viscount, that was just going to be her own trial to bear. He must never know about it. When they arrived back at the Viscount's phaeton, he lifted her into it as though she weighed a feather, which sent another thrill through Anne, one that she once more chose to ignore. Once the Viscount gained his seat, they rolled out, taking their place in the slow queue of vehicles circling the park. He was a skilled driver and made quick work of manoeuvring through the congestion. They took a turn around the park, then headed back toward Anne's temporary dwelling. She was grateful for the idle chatter the Viscount kept up as he tooled her around in his phaeton. Anne began to relax and actually enjoyed the outing. She chuckled over his wry comments about others in the park that day, despite casting him a reproving glance. "My lord, you really ought not to fill my head with such opinions. I cannot say for sure if I can be trusted not to blurt them out at the most inappropriate times." "Are you planning to change into a different person overnight?" he asked, surprise evident in his voice. "No? Why?" she queried. "It seems to me that you never speak without thinking it through rather thoroughly." Anne had a laugh over his words. "I wish that was the case, my lord. No, I have not been recently in the habit of thinking much at all, I am afraid. It is a painful thing to realize and acknowledge about myself. But I think I have been unforgivably foolish." "Not unforgivably, surely, my lady." Wesley's tone was back to teasing, and Anne was forced to laugh despite her discomfort. Well, never mind. I have every intention of changing that now. But I suppose you are correct in that I am not really a blurter. I should think your statements are safe with me. You really are terribly droll, though, I must say, my lord. I do aim to please, my lady. I didn't say I was pleased, my lord, merely that I was amused. She would rather die than let the Viscount know he made her feel fluttery. It was a ridiculous situation. Thank you for the drive, Lord Dunbar. I appreciate the attention you are giving to my troubles. I will make every effort not to be more of a burden than necessary. Anne said this as the Viscount was lifting her down once more. His reply, said over her shoulder just as he put her on her feet, sent another thrill along her nerve endings. A lady could never be considered a burden, Lady Anne. She knew he was merely being gallant, and she ought to dismiss his words as the nonsense they were, but Anne could not help it when her heart picked up its pace within her chest. She didn't bother replying, as she couldn't for the life of her come up with anything to say. After the footman opened the door to her, Anne greeted him politely, and then ran up to her room. Leaning her back against the door, she gazed at the ceiling, thinking over the ups and downs the day had taken. She didn't know if the Viscount's plan would work, but she couldn't help feeling much more positive about her prospects for the future. With a grin, she summoned her maid to begin her preparations for the evening. Wesley drove around to his club, not overly far from where he had dropped off Anne, certain the gentleman he was looking for would be gathered there. It had become their custom most afternoons to meet up and have a brief visit, checking in with one another. He pondered how best to broach the subject with his friends, but realized only the truth would do. Jumping down from his phaeton, he bade his servant take his team home. He would just as rather walk home after meeting with his friends. Sure enough, when he stepped into the club, he was greeted cheerfully by an attentive footman. "Good afternoon, my lord. We had just about given up on you coming this afternoon. Your friends have nearly finished off their decanter without you." "That is excellent news. They should be in receptive spirits, then." Wesley grinned. "Are any of the private rooms available just now?" "Of course. I can show you to one immediately." "Let us pass by my friends on the way. I was hoping they would join me." "Very well, my lord." The footman bowed and carried on, leading the way to where Lord Grey and Lord Sutton were seated. "Dunbar!" Sebastian Grey exclaimed, delight evident in his wide grin. "We had quite given you up for today. Where have you been hiding yourself?" "I was out for a drive," Wesley replied, grasping his friend's outstretched hand in a firm handshake. "It is partially that which I would like to discuss with the two of you, if you would be so good as to accompany me where we could have a bit more privacy." The Earl rose slowly to his feet, very much the more sardonic of the trio. "What kind of trouble are you about to get us into, Dunbar?" His drawl was belied by the twinkle Wesley could see shining in his eye. James Grant Spencer, the 5th Earl of Sutton, was always ready to jump in when his friends needed him. The two friends must have noticed how serious Wesley appeared, because they quit their good-natured teasing and followed where the Viscount led. The footman ushered them into a small book-room, set down a bottle of brandy and some glasses, and then left them, silently closing the door on his way out. As soon as the door closed behind the servant, Lord Grey burst out. "What is going on, Dunbar? It's unusual for you to be able to contain yourself with a secret. Is this more of Rentham's mess? The two of you left us out in the cold up until now." The nobleman scoffed. "What happened? Did you realize you cannot do it on your own?" "In a manner of speaking, yes," Wesley replied softly, bringing the sharp gazes of his friends swiftly to meet his own. All the teasing went out of their faces, and the atmosphere in the room became quite serious. "Out with it, Dunbar. You know we are at your service," the Earl stated with quiet dignity. Wesley broke the stiff silence by grinning at his friends. "I am absolutely confident that I can rely on you. That is why we are here. And yes, it is somewhat related to that other matter. Have you been drinking all afternoon? I need to fortify myself before I launch into the tale." They each held out their glass for Wesley to fill. Once they had all tossed back their drinks, Wesley started in on his explanation. "Remember how I told you that a young lady was planning to entrap Alex into marriage in order for that swine Broderick to gain access to his influence? I remember thinking it was a daft plan, but yes, it was just last week, so we definitely recall your story. Go on." Wesley didn't bother disputing with the Earl over it. It was old news now, so he got to his point. "Well, I need your assistance in helping that young lady." "Helping her with what?" Sebastian demanded. "And why in the name of all that's holy would we offer her any sort of assistance? Do you not recall that you just told us she was trying to entrap our brother?" "She appears to have seen the error of her ways. In fact, I no longer believe she ever meant him harm. She wasn't in league with Broderick's schemes. She merely sought a well-heeled husband, a normal enough pursuit amongst ladies of the ton. Besides, you know Wrentham would want us to help her." "But he's soft as a kitten most of the time," Sebastian scoffed. "And more to the point, he's not here." "Exactly. He's not here, so he would expect us to do this for him in his absence." The Earl had been watching this exchange with cold perception. "Have you gone soft on us now too, Dunbar? Or did the wench turn you up sweet?" Wesley knew his cheeks were growing warm, but chose to ignore it and brazened it out. "Neither," he declared with resolution. "It was my idea. If word gets out about her involvement, she'll be ruined." "And well she should be," Sebastian spluttered, still disbelieving their friend would want them to help someone he clearly viewed as an enemy. Always the steadier of the crew, the Earl continued to watch Wesley. "What exactly did you have in mind? I danced with her last night. She seems to be reasonable enough, for a female, but I really doubt you are going to expect one of us to make an offer for the chit, so how can we help her out? If all three of us start to show an interest in her, it will cause a stir and get other gentlemen interested. Before too long, she'll have a couple offers to choose from, and she will be off our hands." Sutton continued to watch Wesley, and the Viscount held his gaze. "Very well, it sounds like a reasonably simple plan. When did you want to start?" Wesley could barely believe it had been that easy. Sebastian blustered a little longer, but within moments the three had agreed to meet at the Clairhurst ball that evening in order to put their plan into action. "Is she a complete dowd?" Sebastian thought to ask, just before they took leave of one another. "Why would you ask that?" Wesley asked, puzzled. Sebastian eyed the Viscount, obviously perplexed that he would question the obvious. "She would not need our help finding a husband otherwise, would she?" Wesley chuckled over his friend's comment. "I can see why you would say so. But no, while she is a trifle mousy, I would not say she is a dowd." He paused in thought and then shrugged. "You shall see for yourself this evening," he finally concluded. Sutton's amused gaze watching him irritated Wesley. He recalled Anne's words about the Earl. Wesley wondered what the other man was thinking, but decided he didn't really want to know. They had agreed to a course of action. It wasn't the time for second-guessing. Within minutes, the decanter was empty, and the three gentlemen took their leave of one another after finalizing their arrangements to meet at the Clairhurst ball.